All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Samurai Brothers. Matthew, I believe it's 35, right? So 35,
I think it's 34.
34. Okay. We'll get that straightened out. But welcome back, everyone. We had a very exciting weekend of sports happening so far. And then obviously the new chapter for One Piece is out. So we'll just kind of get into that and see what's been happening around. Right, Matthew?
Yep.
Right. Well, let's dive right into it. Obviously, the new chapter from One Piece after a 1 week break. So we are seeing more about what's happening in the Elbaf arc so far, and it looks like the God's Knights are at work, right?
Yeah, they're putting their plan into motion to basically kidnap the children of Elbaf.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's looking like they're really powerful in ensuring their
And the one thing I've noticed is that obviously the two guys who were brought to the island via their transportation methods are confirmed as devil fruit users. So this basically means, I mean, obviously we saw it with the five elders, but I believe these two are the first. The two guys are the first confirmed users. Is that correct?
uh well we had I mean there were hints that what's his name Shamrock is probably a devil user, and what's her name is definitely a devil user. But
Yes, Gunko.
yeah, Gunko is definitely a devil fruit user, and it's hinted that Shamrock is. But clearly, these guys are
Also,
also devil fruit users. Yeah.
so now the question is, because they're being stopped, obviously they're trying to kidnap the children, but it seems like we're kind of figuring things out. But the new revelation for the chapter is obviously that, they were trying to stop Luffy and company were trying to stop Loki from rampaging on the island. And it looks like, though, the damage he took from the attack by Shamrock and Gunko has really weakened him. So once he tried to make an attack on his own, he ended up looks like being taken down. And I can't really tell if that was an actual shot by Luffy or if he just fainted on his own.
That's a very good question because Luffy kind of took a shot at him, but he was, you could tell he was treating him with light
Yeah,
gloves.
because
So
Luffy did say that he didn't want to really take him out that much, it seemed, based on the dialogue between him and Zoro. Now, the other revelation we're seeing also is that obviously Hilding wants to take out his own brother, because of the fact that Loki gave him a tough childhood. But it seems as though Loki may have been set up by an unseen force to make it seem like he had murdered their father.
yeah, and it's sounding like he what's it
Hildin.
called? It's sounding like he what's it called? Uh yeah, it sounded like he's dealing with some trauma, and they're clearly also aware of the fact that uh with there's a hint that they know that he didn't that
Right, that he didn't do it. Yeah.
right. They're heavily insinuating that Loki took the blame, but is not the one who is responsible for, at least not in the way that they portrayed it,
Right.
because they portrayed it as him just ruthlessly killing Harold, and it's starting to sound like that might not have been the case.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes along. Obviously, as we get into the next chapter, which I believe is going to be will come out next week. but we'll double check to make sure. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of right now the pace is building up, but we'll see what happens when the battle starts getting in. I think that's when the conversations will really start uh, gaining momentum, I would say.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're starting to ramp up there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's kind of where we're at as far as One Piece is concerned. Now, Matthew, obviously, what we had been covering over the last week and a half, the Sumo Basho has finally come to an end. And unfortunately, we saw Yokozuna Hoshoryu pulling out in his debut Basho. Obviously, once he went 5-4 with his fourth loss, 3 Kimboshi. Obviously, not a great way to be starting the Basho. So it sounds like they just pulled him out without really trying to risk anything. With the possibility of a Makekoshi, which has only happened twice, as far as we know, to Yokozuna.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's interesting how that has gone, because the first person to do that was Chiyonofuji, and up until Hakuho set records, he was I had the second highest number of Basho after Taiho. But then you had
Kitao, who changed his name to Futa Haguro,
who never won a Basho.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Yokozuna.
It's like he was the circumstance of desperation on the part of the Sumo Kyokai, because there's no Yokozuna, and there weren't, I forgot, were there something like 4 Ozeki at the time or something like that? So they had
there was like, I think there was 4. There was gonna be a 5th on the way.
Yeah, they had an excess number of Ozeki. They had no Yokozuna because none of them were performing up to standards. And while up till that point, Yokozuna had been promoted prior to winning a Basho, they still eventually won a Basho.
Right.
But my understanding was he kind of also came in with a bad attitude as well. So
yeah, things are a little bit different. Obviously, it's just the first Basho for Hoshoryu, but the other thing is he also has Yusho experience.
Yeah,
so
he's won 2.
Thing. Right, he has won 2, so we can't really write him off as of yet, and hopefully, he's going to rest up on his injuries and come back stronger in the next Basho.
Yeah, here's the fact of the matter: everyone has a bad Basho.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, and it just so happened that Hoshoryu had a bad Basho in his first Basho as a Yokozuna.
Well, and typically, in Ozeki debuts and Yokozuna debuts, you're going through all these ceremonies, you're doing all meeting with supporters, you're doing all this stuff that really doesn't allow you to put in as much, time in Keiko as you would on a normal basis. So there is kind of, the people take you to parties and everything. So there's all this stuff that goes on. So it's not like, this type of thing, it's normal for this type of thing to happen, although not to the extent of pulling out. Ozeki pulling out, we've seen that all the time. Yokozuna pulling out in their first Basho, now it's like the 3rd time that this has happened, and but it's not like we're gonna have another Kitao situation, but
it's not a Kitao situation because he's already won 2 Basho. He's got 2 more Basho than Kitao had.
Right. I do think though, I think because the Kyokai did kind of put themselves in a spot when
they fast tracked him. It was a similar situation.
Yeah.
They had 3 Ozeki. They had Terunofuji retiring, and they'd given him a lot more slack than I don't think they gave him more slack than
one, he had a lot more hinkaku, or dignity than Hakuho did during the last couple of years, of his career. So
which unfortunately has kind of extended into him not getting a hold of his heya, and his heya being closed and folded into Isega Hamaya, and him
Right.
getting demoted as a what's it called,
As an Oyakata.
As an Oyakata. Hopefully, he will work his way into the good graces to where he'll be able to reopen his Heya.
Right.
Hopefully.
Well, I mean, we have seen circumstances happening of that before, which is where, a Heya was forcefully closed. In fact, I think that I've seen that happen on a few occasions. One Heya was allowed to reopen with their history intact, and that is actually the Kisei Beya, which is where Ura is from, if you know Ura.
Yeah. The Osaka native who is very crafty.
Yes.
I'm going to be honest, because of how short he is and compared to how short we are, I kind of have a kindred spirit with him. Even though on that last day he was going against Tobizaru, who was also short.
Well, and he also was an amateur sumo wrestler back in the day.
Ura?
Yes, Ura. I believe he did represent Japan at the World Championships.
Did he win though? So here's an interesting thing about that. The person that comes to mind whenever I think of someone who won an amateur championship and then moved on is Enho at lightweight.
Yep.
Who's congrats to him making it back to Makushita after having all those injuries that bumped him. Did Teruno Fuji and bumped him all the way to Jonidan is the lowest, right?
Jonidan is the second lowest.
I think he was all the way down to Jonokuchi, but I think because of how
Enho, yes.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if a veteran has an injury and then starts coming back, they'll fast track a veteran back up a little bit quicker than some of the new guys.
Yes, actually, if Enho were to complete that cycle, he would then become the first. He would break the record. He would become the first former Makuuchi to fall all the way to Jonokuchi and then come back.
Teruno Fuji doesn't count.
Ura has the record. Ura fell lower than Teruno Fuji.
Did Teruno Fuji only make it to?
He fell to Jonidan also, but so did Ura. Except Ura fell lower in the division than Teruno Fuji did.
Neither one of them fell to.
No, neither one of them fell to Jonokuchi.
Okay.
Enho did though. You're right. Enho did. So we could see that he could become the first wrestler to fall all the way to Jonokuchi from Makuuchi and come all the way back. He does have that chance.
The advantage he would have as a Issei Gahamaya, because he was with, I forget what Hakuho's Heya was, but once he got folded in, he's got the advantage of being in the Issei Gahamaya, and he's not going to have to face all those challenging guys. Because there's a lot of Issei Gahamaya guys in Makuuchi.
Yeah, there are.
Even if Takara Fuji's getting, because Takara Fuji's probably getting demoted to Juryo, so even without that.
Well, I think eventually, I think if the Heya, if Hakuho is allowed to reopen Miyagino, then obviously you'll see that split. But until then, you never know. But hopefully, yes, he'll get that opportunity again. But anyway, we really need to talk about who ended up winning the Yusho. Now, obviously,
Ono Sato come from behind against Takayasu.
Takayasu, our perennial Yusho contender.
Perennial runner-up.
Again, and loses in a playoff again. It's just, I guess there's something about them playoff blues. But at least on this time, Takayasu didn't lose on the last day like he has done in previous Basho where he ended up.
Technically, he did in the playoff.
Well, in the playoff, yes, but in the main matches, he didn't lose because he was able to.
I saw he did one or two playoffs before.
Yeah, he did. He's been in like 3 playoffs, I think.
Yeah, it's like, what is it with him that he gets that? He's gotten that high and then he chokes for some reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 5, 6 runner-ups?
Well, if you want to hear about the really big stat, he got to a 10-0 once and still lost. So, but anyway, congrats to Onosato. Yeah, really holding the line as the Ozeki.
Number
3
3.
Yusho, and that is tied for. Actually, it's tied for most as within the active spear. And I saw someone had posted, who all are currently active that have Yusho experience, and there's something like 12 guys. And obviously, in this post Hakuho era, it's really hard for anyone to really be a dominant force, and we've talked about this before. It's just that no one's really got that drive to really
I'm not going to say drive. There's definitely drive. There's definitely ambition. They just haven't developed the skills yet. There's some good promising guys, but they're still relatively brand new. Like, even if you want to include the Ozeki, all 3 Ozeki are, well, I'm not going to say all 3. The Ozeki and the Yokozuna, they're all in their mid to late 20s. Wait, actually, I think Onosato's still 24.
I think he's in his kind of like early mid 20s.
Well, yeah, because he set that record of going from that Makushita. What's that system where if you're an amateur champion, you get to go and halfway through Makushita?
Tsukedashi.
Yeah, so he started as he did a Tsukedashi and he went M15 and then had this record level of going to Sanyaku and winning a Basho, which beat Takeda Fuji's previously set. And Takeda Fuji had to start from the bottom.
Yeah, so kind of like, especially when I do my record keeping, I kind of put them in separate categories. You got the people who really did start from the bottom, which Takeda Fuji owns that record outright.
Yeah, he still owns the bottom to record. But
as far as the other one, that would go to Onosato because it was like, from debut to pro debut to winning the U show. Obviously, that would count for him. With that being said, though, still no word kind of, and it's only I think right now it's 9 a.m. in Japan right now. But there really wasn't I tried looking up sumo articles and stuff. There really isn't any talk yet about the fact that he's won the U show. Now is he on a Tsuna run? Well, I'm sure that they're probably being a bit cautious with the fact of what happened with the other wrestler.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is they fast-tracked Hoshoju. The standard, the loose standard, because it's never been set in concrete, the loose standard is 3 what's it called? 3 Basho championships or equivalent, and one of those has to be a Basho. Hoshoju had a runner-up and a Basho. His previous, I don't even think he got into 6 digits to Basho before that. So he got fast-tracked. So understandable, and Onosato got into double digits last Basho, but he wasn't even in title contention. So yeah, it's like you've got a Yokozuna, but yeah, I would be cautious about that going forward. But something that to me is still a little irritating, I looked up Taka Keisho's record. He was, it's like he was runner-up for he was, that perennial Ozeki for the longest time. And there were several times where I would argue he should have gotten a Yokozuna promotion. He never got 3 Basho in a row, but there were runs where he got like 2 Basho and a runner-up. Or maybe just below that. And I was just like, why? So, and I'm just like, Tendo Fuji definitely deserved that because he won 2 Basho in a row, and then the one after he got promoted after was runner-up to Hakuho in an undefeated.
An undefeated. That's kind of hard to argue that one. Now, see, like you go back to when Kakuryu got promoted. Kakuryu was promoted on a Doten, so a playoff, and then a Yusho. But in his case, both records were 14-1. So I can see where the Kyokai came from because, hey, a 14-1, that is Yusho level, performance.
Well, Kakuyu wasn't a bad aside from
No, he
maybe his
wasn't.
departure, he wasn't a bad performance wise, he was not a bad Yokozuna per se.
Right. But yeah, I think, they 13-2, 12-3, plus the fact that before that, I think he went what, 8-7?
Something like that.
So he didn't have a double digit record to Basho before he won his Yusho. Now
Yeah,
I'm looking at
it's one of those things where it's like I hate to say they're getting buyer's remorse.
I don't think they're like, okay, when the judging department, when we start hearing from the judging department and the YDC, then we'll know that they're getting buyer's remorse. Now, keep in mind that the YDC also, they play a part in this. They did recommend Hoshoryu for promotion, and then the NSK acted on it. Now, I'd like to see what the actual voting was. I don't think they make those public, but I do know that there were a number of voices within the NSK who were like, maybe we should kind of wait on this. But the problem is that once the YDC says that they should go for it, it kind of starts, being this. It's kind of like in politics. You kind of have to maneuver, your people to get the votes, right?
Yeah, they rarely they rarely when a it's one of those things where rarely once the recommendation's been made that they rarely say no.
Yeah. So we'll see how Onosato does in the next Basho. He could be 75th Yokozuna, but that means we could also have a Yokozuna Ozeki again, because I think Daisho did not get a 10th win. Yes, Daisho did not get a 10th win. So he's obviously not going to be on an Ozeki run, because I know he had a good Basho in the last Basho, but, it's kind of hard to do that off a single digit record. So now he's going to have to, if he could maybe put in like 2 really great performances over the next 2 Basho, we might be looking at it. But so far, I would say that there's no one right now currently on an Ozeki run.
Well, yeah, because Kirishima just as a Komusubi just got a Kachikoshi, which means that he's gonna be sliding in the Oho spot, but he's starting over from a Sekiwake.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, he went 8-7.
Yeah.
He's had to make a comeback from Sanyaku because he was rank and file Maegashira.
Yeah.
So
well, anyway, so congrats to Onosato for his 3rd Yusho. We'll see how things shape up for the May tournament, Matthew, and that's when we will also be competing in the U.S. Sumo Open.
Yes. Let's see. 3rd time for me, 4th for you.
That's right. So we'll see how this goes. Bit off our finishes at the SoCal Open. Hey, maybe we can start making some waves.
We'll see how our other club members do as well, because they're both signing up and they're both looking forward to it.
Yep. So, all right, cool. So, Matthew, let's move on to our main event of this episode. And boy, man, a lot of storylines that were really taking place during the tournament itself, and then also during the finals. So I think first storyline that I think I'd like to get into is just University of Nebraska. Really phenomenal finish to the year, taking 2nd place. First time they've ever taken 2nd place or above as far as team trophies are concerned. And of course, their head coach was named coach of the year. And the other thing we have to see is that, they had 3 finalists. 2 of them ended up winning. And first time since Jordan Burroughs in 2011 that Nebraska has had national champions. Matthew, your take on it?
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where it's you have to build up your guys, and eventually just get around to it. And it's they finally got their run, and it's unfortunate that they didn't. It's well, I'm not gonna say it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for them, not unfortunate overall, because Kill got another notch towards that. It's like I say, I think I do think he's gonna beat Gable's record.
Yeah, that's true. Obviously with PSU, 10 for 10 in All Americans. And this is,
Record.
yeah, that ties, I think Minnesota did it back in 2001. And of course,
Technically, it beats their record because Minnesota got 10 for 10, but no champions, whereas
well, yeah, I mean,
PSU got 2 champions.
yeah, I mean, you can rank it how you want to rank it, obviously, but it's the first time since 2001 that this has happened, right?
Yeah. Well, and PSU won or beat their own scoring
Yeah,
record.
their own scoring record, which is just to me phenomenal that they can just keep pushing the boundaries, in this sport within the division. And it just, I think it also just elevates the Big Ten, because Big Ten has to keep up one way or another. So before we also get into some of the more individual stuff, props to David Taylor and the fact that, taking Oklahoma State to a third place finish kind of mirrors what Cale did, in his first few years at Iowa State.
Yeah, if we want to go a little bit further back, not didn't beat John Smith's debut. John Smith's debut, they won the national championship as a coach. He just finished his amateur wrestling career, and he slid in, and it helped that his brother Pat Smith was there wrestling.
Yeah,
but
wrestling.
they were just coming out of the probation, and but they went in there, and but I'd say David Taylor's doing a good job because he's
So how about on some of the individual stuff? So first one I want to cover. So Carter Starachi, now a 5-time D1 national champion. And I have some things that I'd like to say about this. One, because I know that people were, complaining about the fact that, hey, he got an extra COVID year, and that seems a little bit unfair. But, at the same time, I kind of like to point out that, what, for a lot of guys ended up getting an extra year because of COVID. And, we have quite a few guys that have ended up being 5-time All-Americans. And what I would say to the fact that, Carter going out there, I think he's at that point where it's like, if he's allowed to do it, then he should take that opportunity. And that just means that I think it's not more about, proving to everyone else. It's more about proving to himself that he can go out there and do that. So I know that there's probably a lot of haters that, be like, well, why was he getting that? And that's so I think that, hey, he went out there because he had something to prove to himself more than he had anything to prove to any of us. So Matthew,
yeah, haters gonna hate. He was given the opportunity, and he's got a unique spot in wrestling history because there have been no other 5-time D1 champions. Now, there's been more than one. It's like we've talked before about there being more than one national wrestling champion, but not more than not D1.
Yeah, and actually,
like we talked about Carlton Hasselrig.
Well, and also because I know that JB and DC were kind of talking about it last night in the broadcast. But so obviously, yes, you got Carlton Hasselrig won 3 times at D2, and then he won 3 times at D1. But
because they allowed that at the time,
right? Because they were allowing that at the time. But they brought up another person who seems to kind of have been forgotten in the annals of history, and that's Gray Simon. And Grace Simon was a wrestler back in the 60s. He participated in the Olympics in the 60s, but in his case, he is the one who has the ultimate record because he won the NAIAs 4 times, and then he went out and won the D1 championships 3 times. So
that was a record that I'd actually seen before. I think he was supposed to go to some wrestling camp that I was looking to go at when I was still in high school. But yeah, I'd seen that statistic before where he was a 3-time D1 champion back when back in those days where, your freshman year in NCAA, unless you were given a waiver, you were supposed to be studying. So yeah, he won the 3 like Dan Hodge did, and not as dominant, but I guess at the time they allowed Lock Haven, they allowed them to have multiple be in multiple division organizations. So his 3 were 60, 61, 62. His 4 in NAIA were 59, 60, 61, 62. So it was this unique this unique circumstance. So it was similar to what Carlton Hasselrig went through, where he was allowed to go multiple divisions. D1 obviously didn't like that, which is why you're not allowed to dual enroll in NAIA and NCAA. You got to pick one or the other. And it's the same thing with the D2 D1. The D2 champions can't compete in D1 again with Carlton Hasselrig.
So anyway, Matthew, we have to close out this part of the discussion as we're running a little bit short of time. But man, the last match of the evening, and boy, they were talking about, I know a lot of people ended up not being happy with the fact that they put Carter first, because that was going to be history made right there. But boy, was there a lot of history in the last 30 seconds of the NCAA season. Man, I tell you, Wyatt Hendrickson, versus Gable Steveson.
I do not remember the last time I saw heavyweights chain wrestling like that. Mm-hmm. And they're not, well, I don't know how heavy Hendrickson is, but because, if he's in Air Force, he can't be that heavy. But Gable's not a small guy.
No.
So to see giants chain wrestling like they're, a few weight classes smaller, I was just like, oh my gosh, these guys are moving.
Well, and I think just, when I saw, obviously it's like Gable's up 4-2, and then Wyatt goes in for that shot, and I'm thinking, well, okay, yeah, he's getting in there, he's trying to get that last move in, but then it's like he started, bringing it in, and then all of a sudden,
it's just
Gable off balance.
It's wrestle till the bell. And he wrestled until the whistle.
And I'll tell you what, yeah, that's like that crowd got so into it, man. That's like I was so in it. It's like I'm like jumping out of my seat and stuff, just watching that. And
Dad and I were both like, ah!
It's like, yeah, it's like the moment was just waiting to happen. And so, just the thing about because he is from Air Force, and obviously, coming in, politics aside, stuff like that, coming in with the flag and and the Jesus shirt and all that stuff. But man, it's like the really befitting of his nickname, Captain America.
Yeah, well, he earned that, and my understanding is he's going to go into the Air Force training.
Yeah, but he probably, from what I'm hearing, he will stay in Stillwater to try and train for the 2028 Olympics. So,
yeah, 2028.
2028, yes.
Well, how long can he hold off?
He can delay for 5 years, I think, was what they were saying on the broadcast.
And
he just got out of Air Force, so this was year 1, and the LA Olympics are 3 years away.
So he would be at 4 years once he finishes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
We'll see. But yeah, I mean,
well, I guess the question is, where does Gable Stevenson go from here? Because my thought was always, why are you going back? You've done. It's like you did that. You did. He did NFL football. He went to the WWE. I was just like, why are you going back?
yeah, and I think the other thing was I think he was definitely in shock. He was probably gassed, like you had mentioned earlier. You know, and this was the first time he'd ever been taken down this whole season.
Yeah, well,
I think he was just in shock because of that. So
Okay,
really great finish to the season. Congratulations to Wyatt. And like Dad had told me earlier, the fact that Wyatt came out and did what he did, plus Hamidi, who had never made the finals before, he went out and won also. So this is going to be a great opportunity for Oklahoma State to really get back to business about doing what they've always done, which is be a successful wrestling program.
Yep. So we're gonna mention one last person and then call it, right?
Yep, that's right. We're running short on time here, but yes, George Foreman, heavyweight boxer, world champion, very nice person as we've seen in life. Very outgoing. He was even a pastor, minister.
Very smart with his with the George
Business.
Foreman grill.
Yeah, business acumen.
He made hundreds of millions of dollars from that grill alone. He's gone on record saying he made more money from the grill than he ever made boxing.
So yes, a legend has left us. And obviously with he was in there with a lot of other legends. Obviously Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, Rumble in the Jungle. So that's just life when we are all called home. So yes, rest in peace to the great George Foreman. And so we'll see how. So Matthew, I guess next week we'll be back. We'll see how things are going with a lot of other things going on around the world. And
I guess the major thing we'll probably talk about is the U.S. Nationals for sumo should be done, so we could talk about those results.
Yep, so we will. All right. Well, with that being said, everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been John and Matthew from the Samurai Brothers, and we will be seeing you again.